This is the HyperX Pulsefire Haste 2 wireless. If it looks familiar, you might recall a few months ago when I reviewed the Pulsefire Haste 1, which is still what I consider one of the best budget gaming mice for the money. HyperX has gone ahead and made some changes in a newer and more premium version, and what I can say right off the bat is this is a very solid mouse. I've been testing it for the last month and I've really been enjoying my time with it, but that said, there are a few things that I would change. And I'll be getting into that, but first, I want to give a shout out to mechkeys.com who sent this out to me to review. I'll have a link to their store in the description in case you want to check them out. Now, just in case you haven't seen my review of the Haste 1, here's a quick rundown. And just as a side note, you can get both the Haste 1 and Haste 2 in either wired or wireless versions. I know here I have a wired version and here I have a wireless version, but don't let that confuse you, that's always been an option. This is a decently sized mouse that's going to cater more towards large and medium hands, and with a moderately steep slope on both ends of the mouse, it manages to feel quite low profile. If you're a fan of the Zowie FK or the Glorious Model O shape, then there's a good chance you'll enjoy this shape too. It works out pretty good for fingertip and claw grip, however, unless you have smaller hands, palm grip is going to be a bit of a challenge. As you can see, they've gone ahead and removed the holes on the newer version, which personally never bothered me, but I think a solid shell does appeal to more people. The in-hand feeling is quite nice as the coating is really good. It has a bit of texture to it and it's not entirely matte, although it doesn't overdo it with a distracting texture either. Shape-wise, they're exactly the same, although you can see on the Haste 2 they removed a little ledge here, and I've expanded the buttons a tad bit. Probably the biggest change between the two is that the newer version now uses an upgraded sensor that supports up to 26,000 dpi, and the wired version now supports an 8K polling rate. Sadly, you don't get the higher polling rate on the wireless version even if it's plugged in. However, what you do get is the option to use Bluetooth. So you could have this connected to two different devices. One PC for gaming and one PC for work, for example. And all you have to do to switch between the two is use the toggle on the bottom. As far as the other differences between the wired and wireless versions of the Haste 2, the wireless one obviously weighs a bit more, coming in at 61 grams instead of 53 grams because of the added weight of the battery inside. And speaking of the battery, you get about 100 hours on a full charge, which is not shabby at all. I don't think I ever had this thing die on me once, and all I had to do was charge it about once a week. In terms of build quality, I've got nothing to complain about. I don't know if I just got lucky with my copy, but this is one of the best build qualities on any mouse that I've tried in quite a while. When squeezing the mouse, there's no creaking at all, although you can make the bottom base plate flex a little bit if you press it from the bottom, which is not really a deal breaker for me. In normal use, the mouse felt really solid, and there's also no side play or wobble on the main buttons. The switches they decided to use on the Haste 2 are quite a bit more tactile than they used to be, which I think most people would prefer over the TTC Gold switches that were used on the Haste 1. It's certainly a lot more satisfying now. However, I was a huge fan of the old switches, and in fact, I haven't tried a mouse yet where I like the switches more than I did on the Haste 1. This is of course preference-based, but to me, this is a bit of a downgrade. I think the older ones had the absolute perfect balance between being light to press, but still providing a good amount of feedback. However, the new side buttons are a definite improvement. Not only are they more tactile, but they have less of a mushy feeling when you bottom them out. One area where I have to give HyperX some feedback, at the risk of sounding like a broken record player, is that they should have made the charging cable come out of the front of the mouse at an upward angle to prevent cable drag while using the mouse in wired mode. This is a small detail, but it's one that a lot of people would appreciate. But thankfully the cable is at least nice and flexible. Another thing I really love about this mouse is the mouse gates they include. They're very quick and they make microcruxons that much better. I would say they're almost comparable to Tiger Eye skates. Now personally, as much as I love this mouse and I think HyperX did a stellar job with it, it's gonna come down to shape whether or not I would recommend this mouse to you. If you're a fan of low profile style mice, then I would say go ahead, it's worth a shot. But as for myself, I find my aim to be better on something like the PureTrack Valor or the Zowie S1C. This mouse does have me excited for the future of HyperX mice though.